Are you brewing tea wrong? In this episode, we're going to test a common method of tea brewing compared to the clay Kyusu Teapot, which is what we recommend for brewing Japanese green teas. This tea strainer is something you may have seen before. While overall, we find tea strainers to be a pretty good method to brew tea, some of them don't provide enough space for the tea leaves. This is one I find to be particularly cramped, so I wanted to conduct a quick tea experiment to see if it really is as bad as I think. For this experiment, I will be using the Gyokuro Cha Musume, our most popular Gyokuro tea. The reason I'm choosing Gyokuro is because among the Japanese green teas, it's the most tightly rolled. Japanese green teas are rolled into these tight needle shapes so that they can retain their flavors for long periods of time and then release them all at once when they're exposed to warm water. Gyokuro tea goes through an extra rolling step to roll the leaves even tighter. This would really allow me to test the limits of this strainer and see if it can handle a tea that expands as much as this. To use the same amount of leaves for each cup, I packed as many as I could get into one half of the strainer, poured it out into a dish, and then filled it up again. This time I closed the strainer and left the leaves inside. These strainers are actually pretty strong, so they can keep the leaves packed inside. I added the dish of leaves to my Kyusu teapot and heated up some water to 60 degrees Celsius. I then measured out a cup of hot water into both the glass and the teapot and began the infusion for each. I would be allowing these teas to sit undisturbed for 2 minutes, which is a standard brewing time for Gyokuro. I first poured out the Kyusu teapot as it has been brewing for slightly longer, and then I removed the strainer from the glass. As you can see, the difference between these two teas is like night and day, with the teapot giving a beautiful cloudy infusion to the cup, and the strainer seemingly not even brewing the tea at all. Seriously, this tea just looks like water. So what's happening here? When dry tea leaves are added to water, they expand many times their original size, which means they take up a lot more space. That's why teapots are incredibly effective when it comes to brewing tea, because they provide a lot more space for these leaves to expand and release their flavor. When we take a look at the leaves used in the tea strainer, you can see that they're really packed up against the side and they form this tight mass of leaves. If you look closely, the leaves are barely opened up at all, which means much of the flavor is still trapped inside the leaves. If I were to put these leaves back into the teapot and rehydrate them, they would release the remaining flavor into a second infusion. In other words, these poor leaves never got a chance, while the leaves in the teapot were able to live up to their full potential. When it comes to the taste of the teas, it's just as you might expect. The tea brewed with the strainer is super watered down, and you can barely get any flavor at all. The texture of the properly brewed tea is much thicker, and the flavor is this beautiful sweet umami that Gyokuro is known for. These two brewing methods may seem similar, but the teas they produce are worlds apart. If you don't have a teapot at home, there are a few other methods you can try. First, use the largest strainer you have. As you can see, a strainer like this will give the leaves a bit more space to create a richer infusion. It's still not as good as a teapot, but it gets pretty close. Another thing you can do is just brew the leaves in a glass and then pour them through a strainer afterwards. The teapot is great because it gives you a container for the leaves to brew and then has a built-in filter to separate them automatically as you pour. But with the right tools, you can recreate this setup at home. If you would like to get a teapot, you can get one for free with certain orders on our website, neoteas.com. Once you start using a teapot to prepare these loose-leaf Japanese green teas, you will notice a difference right away, and you may never want to go back. Thank you all so much for watching our latest tea experiment. For more tea experiments in the future, please make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and also check out some of our other tea experiments. If you have any questions for experiments you'd like to see from us, please leave them in the comments below. Until then, we'll see you next time.